Hello folks, and welcome to this lesson on leaves. By the end of this video, you should be able to identify the different tissues in a leaf and also relate the different organization of leaf tissues with optimizations for photosynthesis. Before we move on to what the different tissues of the leaf are, let's review photosynthesis and cellular respiration, as these are very key as to why certain things are organized the way they are in a leaf. Now, if you remember, cellular respiration is something that every living being does, and that involves sugar and oxygen being used to produce energy mostly, but usually there is a byproduct of water and carbon dioxide as well. Now, please note that I did say all living things need to perform cellular respiration, including plants. There are going to be a few living things out there that don't use this exact form of cellular respiration, but it's going to look something similar, and they're going to have to perform something where they take sugar and make it into usable energy. Now, in terms of where this sugar comes from, a lot of the times this is going to come from a process called photosynthesis. Photosynthesis needs certain structures inside of a cell to be able to happen, but it is essentially the opposite of what you can see in that cellular respiration reaction, in that you are going to take carbon dioxide and water, plus a bit of energy, and that is going to be used to convert the energy into a different kind of energy, one that's stored within sugar, and oxygen is the byproduct in this case. So something for you to keep in mind as you understand processes that happen in this universe is that energy is involved with a lot of these things, and energy is going to take many different formats. So in this particular case, the energy is going to be a type of energy that the cells can use to then do other things, and this particular energy is sunlight. Plants can't take energy from light and directly use it to do all of its cellular things. It does need to transfer it into sugar, which then is transferred into a different type of energy that it can then use. Now, while leaves are not the only site on a plant where photosynthesis happens, it usually is the main site of photosynthesis. And so many of the structures in a leaf are going to be designed so that it maximizes photosynthesis. So it maximizes the amount of light the leaf is able to accept, it maximizes the amount of water it can hold, and it also maximizes the amount of carbon dioxide it can get from the atmosphere. So keep that in mind while we go over the structures in a moment. So we generally are going to follow the numbers here, and so with number 1 we are going to start with the cuticle. The cuticle is actually not a layer of cells, it's just a layer of wax. And the whole point of this layer of wax is so that water does not escape. Wax is generally waterproof, and so if you have water inside the leaf, it's not going to leave the leaf very easily because you have the cuticle on the very most outside of the leaf on both sides. Another feature of the cuticle is that it is colorless and it is transparent, and so it will let most of the light that hits the leaf to go right through it, because the cuticle itself does not have anything to perform photosynthesis. Now, for the next part, I am going to do number 2 and number 10 together because they are fairly similar. 2 is the upper epidermis, and 10 is the lower epidermis. You may have heard the little bit in that word, epidermis, the dermal, in other contexts as well. For example, a skin doctor is referred to a dermatologist, so dermal usually refers to some kind of a skin. And that's sort of the role that the upper epidermis and the lower epidermis have. They don't have much of a role in photosynthesis, and they're not very good at preventing water loss either, but they are also transparent and colorless, so that light, same as a cuticle, is able to pass through the upper epidermis very easily as well. The next part that we're going to talk about is the main site of photosynthesis. So this is a palisade mesophyll. Now, the palisade refers to how the cells are organized in that they are packed very, very closely together. You can see that, they are very packed closely together, and they are at the top. So I do want you to consider for a moment, pause the video, how do you think this optimizes photosynthesis? The fact that it is located where it is, and it is structured the way that it is. And remember, this is the main site of photosynthesis in the cell. If one of the ideas that you came up with is the fact that because they're packed at the very top, whatever light gets into the leaf is going to be absorbed and used up very efficiently, good for you. That is one of the main benefits to having the palisade mesophyll structured the way that it is. There are also a few benefits in terms of water as well. Water is going to be drawn towards the leaf using other tissue that we're going to be talking about, but when the leaf is hit with light, it can tend to get warm, and any water vapor that you might have is probably going to rise because of that heat, which means it's going to hit that palisade mesophyll layer, which means that it's also going to get quite a bit of water in there as well. Now, there's a fair bit of photosynthesis that happens in this next layer, which is referred to as a spongy mesophyll. The reason it's called the spongy mesophyll is because you can see that it is sort of like a sponge in that there are a lot of open spaces. Those open pockets of air are why it's referred to as spongy mesophyll. Now, the spongy mesophyll is structured in this way so that you can have easy movement of both water and carbon dioxide from where the water and carbon dioxide are coming from to the palisade mesophyll. You might be able to see these holes at the bottom. That's where air is going to come into the cell and things also leave the cell. So carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is going to go into the leaf, and then it can pass through the spongy mesophyll easily because of all of those air spaces and gets to where the photosynthesis is happening. Same thing with the water, it gets to the leaf and then it's able to travel through those spaces to that palisade mesophyll. Now, with both palisade mesophyll and spongy mesophyll, they have a lot of this particular structure, which is what is responsible for the photosynthesis. Now, I've been mentioning this particular feature a few times in terms of its function, and that is this, what this whole thing is, and this is vascular tissue. There are two types of vascular tissue that transport different materials within the plant itself, and also another type of cell that sort of holds all of that vascular tissue together. The one that's on the top is referred to as xylem, and the one that's on the bottom is referred to as phloem. Now, the xylem is responsible for water transport, and the phloem is responsible for sugar transport, for the most part. Now, the last structure that we're going to talk about is this, and so you can see here that there is a hole, and there are also cells that are making this hole. The hole itself is referred to as a stoma in the singular. There are several words that can be used for the plural form, including stomata and also stome. Whichever one of those you use doesn't really matter so much to me. It seems that either are acceptable in this case. Now, the cells that surround the stomata are referred to as guard cells. And these cells are actually lower epidermis cells that have been modified a bit. Now, these are going to control two very important things in photosynthesis. That is how much water gets in or out, and the other is how much gas or carbon dioxide gets in, and also how much oxygen gets out. These are important, and it is important to keep them open so that carbon dioxide can get in, but actually water being able to leave the leaf is also important in terms of getting more water into the leaf as well, and that'll be covered in a later lesson. So the key thing here around the guard cells in the stoma, or the stomata, is the fact that you can control the opening and you can control how much water and carbon dioxide and oxygen are able to come into and leave the leaf. Do note that I have left a few of these blank. That's because I don't find them to be particularly important for what you need to know for this course. As you are organizing your notes later on, do keep in mind and consider what are the things that I said that help this leaf get a lot of light. What are the things that help it get a lot of carbon dioxide, and what are the things to make sure it doesn't lose too much water very quickly? Consider those things as you're taking your notes. I'll leave that lesson here, and I'll see you next time.